to protect us. Bryn, thank you.
Yep.
Let's discuss all of this with CNN law enforcement analyst Matthew Horace. And let's start with Times Square, because I do always feel very safe there, because everywhere I turn there's an officer, there's dogs, and there's a lot of plainclothes officers as well, the security that we don't see, right?
Well, happy holidays, Poppy, first. And as you would imagine, 7,000 officers have been placed on duty to protect and police over 2 million people in Times Square, but then also consider the other 8 million people who are in and around New York City.
When you talk about security, it's not at all just about Times Square. It's about a lot of other cities across the country and smaller towns. I mean, you talk a lot about the lone wolf attack that we've seen far too many of. These attacks have happened in smaller cities, San Bernardino, Orlando, the Ohio College campus attack just in the last year.
Right. Well, let's face it, New Year's Eve happens once a year, not just in New York, but all around the world. And that evening, and what it represents, presents a vulnerability to every city in the United States.
So what do they do? I mean, what do officials, on these college campuses do to prevent against something else like that? What do they do in a San Bernardino?
Well, you have to plan, and replan. As we get prepared, state, local, and federal law enforcement officers work together to come up with plans of mitigation for security risk, and that's what you see happening here in New York.
So they're working locally with the feds and saying, what have you heard? What should we be out for? One other very, very troubling thing that we've seen increase this year is the use of vehicles for mass casualty terror attacks. Trucks in Berlin and Nice, the vehicle used to drive into the group of people on the Ohio College campus. I mean, anything can be a tool of terror.
Absolutely. And every time something happens, it causes us to retool our efforts and rethink our security strategies.
So how do you do that, say, in a Times Square? I mean, they can put some barriers up, right, in the streets there. And that's a little maybe easier to do in Times Square because you have a contained place.
Well, as you know, that's the greatest challenge we have, is to separate security from people's civil liberties. And New York City does a great job of that, but you are going to see an increased emphasis with 7,000 officers on site tomorrow evening.
I walked onto the subway in New York last week, and there was a backpack sitting on one of the seats. And I completely, my heart just started pounding. And I said, whose is this? Whose is this? It's very loud. It was just sort of this, I had this visceral reaction to it. The person sitting across said, oh, that's mine, that's mine. But that is what all of us need to do if we see anything.
Well, every person becomes another set of eyes, and just what you described is what we should be doing. When you see an unintended bag or a package, look at what happened in Chelsea just a couple of months ago. Those devices were placed in bags in different places in New York. So we all have to pay attention to our surroundings, and as always, if you see something, say something.
It sounds sort of like, okay, that's a cute saying, see something, say something. There's likely nothing that can protect the public more than the public being aware.
More survives, more boots on the ground, being aware and making sure that we pay attention to everything. It's our job to help protect each other.
How do you believe that those protecting us have changed their tactics in the wake of the mass terror attacks around the country? I mean, what has changed that we're not necessarily seeing? These guys, all these officers that we're not necessarily seeing in uniform, plainclothes, what are they doing? What are they patrolling for?
Well, behind the scenes, remember, every time something happens, we develop best practices based on the last incident.
So, like, for example, the Chelsea attack. Don and I were on the air live that night. It was these, again, sort of homemade bombs in these bags. How does that change how they protect us tomorrow night?
Well, we look at more things more often with more eyes. We train our officers to be prepared and be aware and be cognizant. We train the public to give us that extra layer of protection. And we hope for the best. We plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Matthew Horace, thank you. Have a good New Year's Eve.
Happy New Year's.
Thank you, too.
Millions of people will be out, not just in Times Square, but all over the world this coming New Year's Eve. Hundreds of new state laws take effect as well on New Year's Eve or on New Year's. And as we bring in the new year, our legal maven, are we going to call him, Jeffrey Toobin, tells us what you need to know for 2017.